So I had a request for making toy train tracks, and how would you go about doing that? How would be the best, most efficient way to do it? This may not be the most efficient way to do it, but it's a pretty straightforward way to do it. And so let's take a look. I'm going to just go into the right view for a second, and as opposed to modeling them all individually, what I'm going to do is create a shape. And the thing I want to verify here is that it is set to linear, because I want to do this, make this nice and square. And I'm going to hold down X, and I'm just going to make a CV curve. And I'm going to start it over here, 3 to one side. So I'm going to go there, and there, 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 just like this, and I'm holding down X so it snaps to the grid. Make life easier. Okay. And now I'm just going to center the pivot. Say W, something like that. And again, I'm going to just move the pivot down to the base. So in this case, I'm just going to hold down D and X and snap that down to the base. Alrighty. So this is a pretty good size to begin with. But I want to use the grid to kind of make my sections. I'm going to make one section and then create all my curved sections off of that. Okay, so what I'm actually going to do here is I'm going to grab this track section and I'm going to scale it uniformly down to 0.25. Alright, so now it's going to be about that big. So it's scaled down to 0.25 and it looks like that. I'm going to freeze its transforms. Alright, and leave that right there. Next, I'm going to create another CV curve, but this one's going to be straight. So I'm going to go back into the CV curve tool, and I'm going to hold down X, and I'm just going to click up here and up here, and just give it 2 points. Alrighty, so what I have is now a 20 unit long CV curve, okay? And I have this right here in the middle. The nice thing about doing it this way was when I want to snap this to this curve, it's already on the curve, so it works out really good. So I can actually hold on to or select the track profile, hold down the C key, which if you look up here is the snap to curve key, okay? And I'm just going to get that and drag it, and I can move that right down to the end. Okay, curve snap's weird. You know it when you feel it. It's sort of, you can pull it off like that. Or when you do it, you just kind of sit it near the curve, and when it pops on, you know it because it just kind of rides along the curve. Alrighty. So in this case, I've got my 20 unit long piece of track path, and I've got a contour. So what I'll do is I'll select that first, then that, and I'm going to go into the Surfaces menu and go to Extrude. Alright, so let's just take a look at this. And I'll set it back to default first, and I'm going to want this to be, it could be at, well, profiles at paths, but at this point I'm going to say at path, let's say path direction, and I just to click one, I'll just make an herbs one so you can see that it actually is going to behave itself just fine, and we can create that. I'm going to make the poly one here since I'm able to do so. So I'm going to select that, and I'm going to say I would like it to be in polygons. Okay, scale up polygons or roll it up. I'm going to want quads. Set it to general, and then the isoparms or per span length. Alrighty. Well, I don't want. This will make sense when you see it. I'm going to set the this first one, the U type, to 1. And I'm going to set the V type, I'll leave it at 3 and then show you exactly what this gives you. I'm going to hit the button, and you can see that it didn't add any extra divisions around the shape, which is great, that's what I want. But it only gave me 3 sections here, which is this 3 span on V. 1, 2, 3. Alright, so that's not nearly as many as I would want. So let's try this again. Let's set this up to well, let's set it up to 10 and hit apply, and that's not bad. That's pretty good. I think we could get away with that, because as little geometry as we can get away with, the better. All right, so I think 10 is going to work out pretty good. If you felt like you needed more, or your track was going to be really bendy and you were going to be doing strange things with it, you could take that up again, maybe even 15, and then hit apply. And as you see, you get even more detail to work with. All right, but in my case, I think that's going to work out just great. Okay, so I have this now. You'll notice that the shading on it looks a little bit weird, and that's because my normals are not hardened. So really easy to do. We're just going to select the object, and I have a button for it, but I'll show you where to find it. If you go back into polygons and you go to normals, right here you're going to see harden edge, and when we do that, you're going to get exactly the look that you would have originally imagined you get. So all the edges on this thing are hard. So here's my theory. Just like one of these choo-choo train tracks that you put together for a kid or something, you have rounded sections, curved sections, maybe even S-shaped sections. What we can do is we can actually create it like that. And if we had time, or if you really wanted to do something spectacular, you could carve in or model in the little circular cutout that shows up in tracks. And I actually downloaded a reference image of that that I can show you guys. Let's see if I have it here. So I have a reference of what I'm talking about. And this would require a bit more modeling, but it would certainly look beautiful if you went into, let's say, let me grab these two images right here so you could see them. Where you could actually just kind of model in that roundness that you get in the track and actually have a better view of it. Something like this. So you get this sort of a view, and I think that looks kind of cool. And it's not difficult, but it does require a little bit of extra work, and if that's your taste to do that, you're certainly welcome to, but I'm not going to go there for this particular demo. But what I will show you to do is, it's best to get all of the things that you're going to want to do to your track done on this track, because we have it here, and then once we start doing bends on it and curves, you won't have to worry about bevels on the edges or your UVs or anything like that. Because what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to UV this thing just so that it's all set up and ready for us to go. All right, so let's just select the object, and I'm going to go into Create UVs and Auto Mapping. So now it's auto mapped. All right, and if we go into the Edit UV Texturer, we can see all the edges are laid out as separate islands, and that's not necessarily what I want, but I'm going to show you how to fix that up real quick. So I'm going to go into edge mode, and I'm going to need to leave one edge open, since when we sew this together we're going to want it to unwrap. Leaving one edge open will definitely help our laying out of really nice UVs. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I am going to select all the lengthwise edges. So we'll get all these edges. Okay, these, and these, and these, and these, and these. All but the last one, which is going to be that one there. So all the rest of the lengthwise edges are there. None of the horizontals, just the lengthwise edges. Okay? Then we're going to go over here, and we're going to be in the UV Texture Editor window, and I'm going to click this icon here that says Move and Sew. So when I tap them together, it basically will sew together the entire UV surface of this, and this big one is the bottom here, so if you look at it that way. All right. So now when I look at this, if I add a material like a Lambert to it, and I can close this now, and we will go into a Lambert, and I will assign a UV map so we can just verify that we've got good UVs on this. And here I have a UV map. And if I just take this and frame it up and look at this, the only thing I'll do just to make it a little bit easier is I'll increase the tiling. so you can actually see that now we have a properly UV'd track section. Okay, so in that case, that's looking pretty good, and I think that's going to give us a nice result. Next thing I'm going to do, just to have it done so we don't have to do it on all the other pieces, is I'm going to add my bevels to this piece. Now this is a matter of taste, this is what you want to do, but in my case I kind of know that I want beveled edges. I think they pick up light better, so I'm going to go into edge mode. Well, first things first, let's just delete history on this object. Okay, go into edge mode, so double click and that just selects that one long edge. I'm going to go shift right click, go into bevel, and let's reset this. Okay, and again I like absolute in a world unit, and I already know that 0.03 should give me a nice bevel. Let's take a peek at that. It's only one unit. We actually want two, but I think the amount of bevel is fine. Let's take a look at that. Yeah, I think that amount of bevel is fine. The only thing I think I would change on this would be, just undo that. I would take this up to 2, like that. Yeah, maybe we'll take it down just a little bit, like this, 0.25. Let's tighten it up a little bit. Just want it enough so it's going to catch light. So we hit that and we say apply, and I think that's going to work out great. Okay. So now we got this nice rounded edge, and what I'm going to suggest is I'm going to select that and tap G. As long as I don't do anything else, first I can take all of these edges, at least the ones on top of the track, and hit those with that bevel. So I get this nice rounded look. Let me turn off the texture for a second so you can see that. So you get this sort of nice rounded look on the top of those edges. Now the thing I'd like you to notice here is, if we zoom in really close, is look at this little face that shows up at the edge of the geometry. Each place I place the bevel. This messes people up all the time. What happens is, then it creates these weird faces here, okay? When you do bevels, one of the things you got to remember to do is at the edges to go back in and delete those tiny little faces. So we've got all these little faces in here that need to go away. Okay? And if you don't, they just create weird geometry that it's going to be hard to understand why it's there or where it came from. Okay? So let's flip it around. They're going to be waiting for us on the other side as well. And there they are. It's just these tiny little faces. So we'll just delete these. All right, and get these last two. Just like that. Which is great, because now when I smooth that, they're nice and clean all the way to the edge. Clearly we need to do some work as far as laying out edge loops, but we are in good shape. Other thing you may notice here is when I did that smoothing, in this edge it looks hard and this one looks soft, and actually this is what I would expect it to do, and this is correct. So my inkling is over here, that if I go into vertex mode, that I'm going to highlight here, it's going to have 2 vertices, which means I have an extra edge down there that whole length. So what I'm going to do is, well, we'll just do it across the board. Let's just grab the whole thing and go shift, merge vertices, and merge. All right. So let's just take a look at this thing. Now we hit 3, and it's nice and smooth on both sides, which means I got rid of those extra verts. Okie dokie. The one thing that you probably do want to do, though, is you're going to want to add the rest of your edge loops in here to maintain the shape of the geometry. So what I'm going to do is shift right click, go into insert edge loops, and I'm going to insert an edge loop here, and insert an edge loop right in here. And you don't need to be insanely precise about this. The advantage of doing it that way, just sort of being a little bit organic, is it feels a little bit more organic. And when things are hand carved or just created. Sometimes that slight handmade shaping really makes a big difference, and it just makes it feel a little bit more realistic. So I'm not going to become too obsessive about them absolutely matching every single edge. So in this case, again, I'm going to keep this down here fairly tight, just like that. And again over here, and again over here, just like that. Okay, hit Q, up out of this, and go to object mode. And if I smooth this now, I get this nice straight piece of chalk. It's got nice detail. We're picking up lighting, and my UVs on it are perfect. Nice and clean UVs. So I'm in good shape, and I have a 20 unit long piece of chalk. All right, so what I'm going to do is just grab my chalk. I'm going to delete its history, and let's start creating some of the other pieces of chalk that we're going to want. All right, so we got that center pivot. As a matter of fact, I'm not going to center my pivot. Well, for now, I'll leave it there. Let's say W, and I'm going to say Control D, hold down this, and move this off to the side, say like that. Put one piece over there. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is add a bend modifier to this, and I happen to have one here, but if you're looking for it, it's in the animation menu under Create Deformers, Nonlinear, and a bend modifier. Okay, so in my case, I'll just grab that and apply my bend modifier. Bend modifier always comes in vertical. It's kind of annoying. I've never actually looked to see if it you can make it come in another direction. Nah, guess not. Hold down the J key so I can do snapping and go snap that to 90 degrees. Chances are I'm also going to have to rotate this down to 90 degrees sideways, but you'll know in a second, because as soon as you go into the channel box and we hit bend and I add curvature of, let's say, 90 degrees, then, or in this case, let's do minus 90 so it's not nearly as annoying. There we go. So we get a nice bend. What you see about that that's kind of cool is our UVs bend with it, and they're still perfect, looking great. So when we apply a wood texture or something to this, it's going to look great. I may want this to not be bent in both directions. As the bend modifier is in the middle, because that's where I left the pivot, I have the ability to take either the high bound or the low bound, and I'll shift both so you can see, and zero one out, and then I get 90-degree turn going this way. If I wanted to do it the other way, I could just simply zero this out and get the turn going that way. Okay? How big of a turn you want is up to you, and you can shift it by moving the actual manipulator further down or further up. So if we wanted this to be further down, make a bigger corner, let's say we're making like kind of a square track or something, you could move that down this way. And you're still at 90 degrees, but you see where you get more of a corner piece like that, and maybe you want something like that. In my case, this is going to be fine. So I'm going to leave that like that, and that'll give me a nice 90-degree curved piece of track. So what I'll do is I'll grab this. I am going to delete the history on it. As soon as I delete the history, the bend modifier is gone, and that bend is baked into this piece of geometry. What I can do to create its mate going the other direction might be to select it, Control D, hold down X just to snap it out, maybe like a little bit further, and I am going to scale this in the -1 on Z. And there you go. And now I have the alternate corner, and these guys should move together nicely. So I can just pop those guys together. For snapping purposes, this is where moving your pivot point could be useful. By holding down D and V, I can actually just move my vertice down to the end there. Then for snapping, I can just do this and just pop those guys together. And then they pop together nice and clean, like that. Okay? So we could do something like that. So those two guys pop together nicely in that direction. And if the vertices seem off at all to you, you can just tweak the vertices, but I think that should be clean. Okay? Let's make another couple of shapes just for fun. We already saw that you can make a complete U-turn shape, so let's do that. I'm going to select this and Control D, and then move this out over here. Let's add a bend modifier. Again, the bend comes in vertically, so chances are I think we're going to want this to be on 90. Okay. And maybe this is on 90. Let's see if I got that right. And add a curve of 90. There you go. And if I wanted to curve the other way, we could just do a minus 90 and that would curve it this way. So here's a U-shaped piece of track. Okay. And if we look at that, the two ends from above, if we go to the top modifier, or the top viewport, excuse me, get over here, select this, frame him up. We should be able to just grab all of this and, sorry guys, let me move this so that we can see that our modifier, we can change it a little bit like that, or we can grab this, just the bend, and tighten up that corner. And you can see where it's nice and flat on either side. So just remember when you put these together, you might want to just snap your vertices or something. But again, the pieces that you're going to make, I wouldn't get too creative about moving this too much. It will deform the track just a little bit. What I would say is this is probably fine. If I wanted to create a bend or some sort of separation, I might insert a loop here and then just open these up and then create two different pieces. But let's say we do that, and I'm going to delete history and bake that piece now. So now I have a U-shaped piece as well. So maybe this piece here, if I move its vertice down to, let's say, there, and then I rotate it, hold down J, and pop, 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 like that. Hit the W, go to V, and now I can just basically snap those two pieces together and they will go together nicely. And then I have those bits of track working together, and you could always do something with this one as well. So we could take this and just kind of tie it in somewhere along here. If it's not that's not in the right place, you might want to take it to there, frame that up, make sure it is on that bottomest vertice. Let's rotate this, maybe 180 degrees, something like this, right? Hold down D, or that, and make V, and just snap those guys together. I don't know if that snapped correctly, but if it didn't, we'll go in there and do it. And there you go. That's okay. So this way we can start to assemble our track like that. Okay, so let me just put these guys all back where they were. Last piece of track I think will show you, and then you can take it from there and figure it out, would be, let's just grab one more copy of this and move it out something like that. Okay, take this and move this, give me a little room to work, like this. Okay, so let's add a bend modifier here. Take this W, hold down J, and snap that into place, hold down J again, and I'll probably just take this down to 90. Let's go with this bend and say 90 degrees. Let's zero that out and do that. Okay, take this and go history. Now let's get another bend modifier. And I'm just going to move this bend modifier over once I rotate it down. But for first step, I'm going to rotate this down to 90. And then I'm going to rotate it on its side to 90. All right. Then I am going to go into the top and move this bend modifier until it's about in the dead center. Just about like that. All right, so now I have it along this line. And the reason I'm doing that, and this will make sense in a second, is let's take this to a minus 90, okay? And let's zero out, see which side I have to zero out. No, not this side, minus 1. Let's take this and say 0. And there you go. Something like that. And that might be right. Let me see. Maybe we take the bend modifier and we move it like that. To right there. And I think that gives me a perfect S, if I am correct. Frame this up, and that gives me a nice S-shaped piece of track. Alrighty, and again we will freeze the modifier and let's lock that, and we'll just leave this here for snapping purposes. Let's go to the top viewport so I can see that. So this should be able to come down and turn that off. And those two should work together nicely like that. If you wanted to snap it perfectly, hold the D and the V, bring it to that bottom corner, then the V, and then that'll snap right into there. And that's, I think, enough information for you guys to start making tracks. Now what you may want to do, because as these tracks are jointing together, you kind of get this butted together joint, but it may not be as cool as you intended or really wanted it to. If that's the case and you want to do something kind of neat, what you might do is, let's say, and you may want to do this on the initial one, because doing it on every single piece of this track would just eventually drive you insane. But you might want to just insert an edge loop, maybe something like that. Right? Come out of that mode, double click this, and there's a couple different ways you can do this, but you might just scale this down just a bit like that. And all that'll give you is, let me turn off the texture, is when we smooth this, you just get that sort of little indented shape. Now the other thing you could do, and I didn't do it, but once again, it's completely up to you. W, and we might do something like, just push that just a little bit like that, right? Is you may want to seal up before we do the smoothing or duplicating. You may want to introduce a face at the end of this, and the reason I mentioned that you might want to do it at the beginning is, if you do it afterwards, you're going to need to UV it, but maybe you don't even want to do that. I think that if you just put faces together like this, and these are kind of starting to eat each other here, so maybe this wasn't the greatest idea, but I think you get the point. Just trying to find a way to avoid that. I think doing this, just leaving it alone, will be fine, because then if I just took my, let's duplicate this piece and see what it looks like when we put them together. Let's just say Control Duplicate, right? And I'm going to flip this thing around 180 degrees, like this, and then move it down like this, grab this, find his pivot point, and I'm just going to snap the pivot like that. Okay, and then take this and pop these two guys together like that. Okay, so when I do that, frame this up. They go together. Maybe I got to change that one a little bit. Looks like I missed a vertex there because everything else seems to be behaving very nicely. You just go to vertex mode for a second, grab some verts, and frame those so I can rotate around this. I think I missed a couple of verts there and you can see them, but basically what you get is you get a just sort of a beveled effect at the end of these pieces, so like that, which is kind of what I was going for. So when they come together, it's not quite as beautiful as that other piece would be. And yeah, and I missed these vertices. So just take these guys and just move them in. But the pieces at least look like, grab these and stick them this way, like that. And then grab these guys, stick them this way, and then just do the exact same here with these guys. Oops. These vertices right here. Move them like that. And grab these vertices right there. And move those in like that. Right? And then at least they kind of look a little bit more homemade, like you butted toy tracks together. So you could do something like that. I think that would look pretty neat. Okie dokie, and then we would just, hit that with the smooth, hit this with the smooth, and then you get that sort of an effect. Not amazing, but I think it's better than just snapping the two hard edges together, like over here. And again, we'd smooth that, but either one would work. Basically, just putting a little bit of a detail at the end, just so it looks like it's a toy track or something of that nature, but. Okay, toy tracks. These are now nice. They're completely UV'd, so you could totally go in and apply wood to them as well, and they'll look terrific. They'll render out really nice, and they snap together. And hopefully this was interesting for you guys. Toy tracks for toy trains. Have fun.